my negative painting with you, which is really not negative, it's positive, so I've got to say that. And the negative painting came from the textile work that I did. Because, and I'm going to show you one of my first negative paintings. It was my wedding invitation many years ago, and it was, let me just put it this way. There's a little shadow, but it's called Two Hearts, and it was my wedding invitation to my husband, who I adore, and it was the first time I ever tried sort of to get a textile look out of paint. And so it's a little rough, but it's a little old, because I've been married for a long time. But I thought I'd bring that to show you.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Let me do a little adjustment. Get it away from your web.
Oh, that's better.
There, you won't get that.
Much better,
There
much
you go.
better.
Right.
Anyway, so I brought that to show you.
That's lovely.
And I'm going to demonstrate and show you a lot of things. The first thing I'm going to demonstrate is, and talk about, is color. Negative painting is all about color. And you've got to know your colors, because you don't want to make mud. And I've got this little, can you see it? There's a group of people. They're holding their arms around each other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wash of paint over these folks. And I'm using wet, really wet on wet for this. And I've chosen mainly primary colors. Although you can do blues and greens and blue, yellow, green, or purple, red, purple, red, and blue. But you've got to keep your colors side by side to be safe. And so I'm going to do this first, and just show you how I'm putting down a wash, and I'm going to do it while it's wet. And I want to make sure that and you can see that these colors are friendly colors to each other. A little bit of red, maybe. I'll just throw a little bit of that red violet in there. And a little bit more water. And this is what we call in negative painting, we call it the underpainting. And the underpainting has to be carefully thought through so that you don't make mud. Okay? And so there's my underpainting for this. And that's only the first layer. Now when I go in with the second layer, I have to be color compatible. When I paint around these figures, I've got to make sure that I'm color compatible. However, I am prepared with a finished version. Which, can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just a way of example of showing you what negative painting is. It's putting down an interesting first coat, and then it's painting around that first coat to bring the image forward. And you can do it with much more, much other kinds of designs and images and so forth. This is really simple, just to make the point about the idea of keeping your underpainting color safe and using some texture. And this one I did use some texture. So let me put this aside here. Let that dry, and I'll put some more paint on it. I want to talk about, I'm going to show you a lot of things. I've got piles of things here. Give you lots of ideas about how to use negative painting. Do any of you know about archive.org? Anybody familiar with archive.org? Well, go to archive.org. It used to be a website that you had to log into and everything. But now you're going to see, if you look at Pinterest, you're going to see, every once in a while, you're going to see the word archive.org at the bottom of a pin. Have anybody seen that? Any of you? No. Well, you want to go in there and look, because there's so many beautiful designs, old designs that come back from the early 1900s, back to the 1800s. And I've had a I've had a ball, just looking at all these designs. And so to show you negative painting, I thought I'll use some of the archive.org designs just to show you. Now here is, it's not as bright as it looks here, but anyways, this is an archive.org design that I played around with. And you can see that what I had to do at the beginning, you have to put down an underpainting. So if your underpainting doesn't work, you're done. In other words, if you have an underpainting that's filled with grays and it's murky and whatever, you should start again, because that's the bottom line. You've got to have a good foundation. So this is an archive.org design. Now this I wanted to show you is an example of negative and positive painting. For any of you that have trouble with that sort of concept, this is painted positively, and this is painted negatively. Does that make sense? Do you see it? Okay. So a lot of people don't. Negative painting is like you gotta shift your head a little bit. So I wanted you to see that. This is an underpainting. Again, it's an underpainting of a very ornate design of scrolls. Hard to see. I may work on that a little bit. Geometrics. Geometrics. This is negative. This is a negative painting. And the other thing is this is texture. I mean, a lot of times, you know how you get some days where you just kind of think about a painting, you just kind of get your head wrapped around a painting that you're in the middle of, that you really don't want to make a mistake and whatever. Sometimes if I'm doodling, I'll just put texture in the paint, and then I find myself using either my paint or my colored pencils to paint around the lighter areas that exist in that, throwing that texture down. And it's fun. It's just fun. It's a time waster too. But now I love using negative painting in backgrounds, and also in borders. And this is an example of something I'm not going to frame it, but I played with it. I wasn't happy with the final, totally happy with the final outcome, but it shows you that what I tried to do was to do my irises and then create a border. And if you're going to do borders, make sure your borders are uneven. Make sure, in other words, that they're not the same. I try not to make anything the same measurement. It's much more interesting when you have a narrow, a wide, medium, or whatever, okay? Do a lot of you use borders? Anybody use borders? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to put it down there. I'm not used to this system here. Yeah, can you see it now? And
the other's right.
yeah, this one there. Okay, there we go. And I do use negative painting a lot like that because I do mostly flowers, and I love creating interesting borders. And I could have put a color around this part of the border. But I wanted it to flow. I wanted those leaves to flow into the outer rim. So that's why I did it the way I did.
So where is white in the border? You painted around the white part and left it white?
That was the first coat. That was the first base coat. This light. That was a very, very light wash of this sort of ochre yellow color. And then I built it up. And it takes a long time. I mean, and you've got to make sure you keep the paint flowing, because if you don't, you'll get some funny marks and so forth. So you got to be really attentive to what you're doing. Oh, that's true of watercolor anyways, and that's true of painting in general. You got to be alert. here's an, I'm gonna bring this one over here. All right. This still isn't, this isn't finished. What it's an example again of borders, and this area in here needs to be darkened. But you see, this is positive, and this is negative. And that's where you get people to look at it and say, what did you do there? Oh, the leaves are not painted directly, or the flower is not painted directly. And so people will look at it and go, try to figure it out, because it's like a puzzle to them. And each of the borders is a little bit different, and make your inside a little uneven, like I did here, where I sort of brought it down here and changed the shape so it's not a square. Makes it even more interesting. So something to think about trying, if you're so inclined. All right, another really fun one are orbs. And I've done these in my classes. You guys remember the orbs. Yeah, this one is, I felt like I needed to do more with it, and it's just sitting in, how things sit around for a while, and then I decided I just want to leave it like it is for the moment. It's harder than you think to do this kind of a painting. You probably can attest to that, because you've got to work fast. When you've got a painting this size, you've got to work fast, and you've got to keep your wits about you. And one little smush of, green in the middle of that would have, be gone. So orbs are a good way to learn how to do this. So, has anybody done orbs? Any of you done orbs? You do? Well, it's the way I teach. It's a good way to teach negative painting. It really is. So let me put this. Okay. I'm going to paint in a minute. I'll just show you a few more things. This is an archive.org design. I loved it with the penguins, and I just give you. Flamingos. I mean flamingos. Yeah. I just liked it. I thought it was a good example, and do a little negative painting with it. And this is, just an old rose with some of these are things that, I do a lot of playing, but with more of a Celtic negative, using a Celtic sort of design in the negative space. And so that's an idea, if you're so inclined to the Irish side of things. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this now for a minute. This is pretty dry. I think it's dry enough to maybe put the second coat on. And let's see, my paint back here. And again, unless you create closure, what I mean by that is, if I had a bar from here over to the edge in here, and broke the space, it would be a little bit easier. But because there's nothing, it's all like sort of flows, I got a flow on the second part of it too. So let's make sure I got enough of the paint here. And you want to go just a little bit darker. So now on yellow, if I want, I can do some orange. I'm going to do some orange. Yeah, I can add a little orange on that. That's compatible. And then I can go to a darker version of the pink, and then I could go to more of a red violet, which I already have out here. And then for the blue, I could do blue, or I could do purple. I could do purple too. So let me mix up some purple here, and I'm going to go to the purple. Okay, and you have a choice. You can do wet on wet, or you can do wet on dry. Now with negative painting, wet on wet on dry, you got to keep it going. You're going to get blossoms and so forth. But I'm going to do the wet on dry all in one fell swoop. So, all right. So this is a darker. It's really kind of an orangey yellow, and it's going on wet on wet. And here now you have to start to think about, painting around the design. You've got to work, and I'm going to get a little bit more yellow in here. Yeah, a little more yellow. And, these are figures, so I've got to hug the. I'm leaving the figure. I'm just doing the negative space. So around here, here. And I've got to start transitioning to something a little bit, so orange, if that makes orange, that's okay. And up here, I'm going to wet it a little bit so that you got to work. You got to be pretty fast. And that works fine because that's, that fits the color underneath. Meanwhile, you gotta get down here because it's going to dry on you, and that's why you keep your paint wet. And you got to get down here and make sure you're doing that, and then in here, we've got this color here. So if I were home, I would definitely be going a little slower and being a little neater. And then you've got the arms. You can get the little figure. And if I want a little change, I can always use yellow. Yellow's always yellow's a good color to link things. So, and then there are little spots that have to be filled in too, between the shoulders and so forth.
As you're doing that, do you have something in mind already for what you want it to become?
With negative painting, I try to be very fluid about it. I try to say, we'll see how this turns out, because there is a little abstract quality to it. And so I try to let, myself go a little bit. Let's see, I'm going to go purple. I can go purple in here because I'm on my blue. And I've got to be really careful when I come around that spot. And the head, don't want to lose the head. I might lose that little area there. And purple, I'm almost at the end, I'm almost there. And I'm starting to see, the picture. And this guy here, there's an arm there, shoulder. And I'm getting to the, I think I need some blue. Yeah. Get some blue, yeah. So you can sort of see how it all sort of evolves. And got my blue. And a little bit more blue, and as we get to the end here. So this is kind of messy. It would be a little bit neater if I get some red up here too. If I weren't working so fast. can be like this, it can be kind of rough, or it can be very refined, depending upon, how you plan it out, the time you take with it. But there you go. I mean, the idea is that that's the second layer, and then you've got to get into the cracks too, like in here, between the figures. You've got to fill those in. And then if you practice with something like this, what happens is you learn to keep your color clean. Keeping the color clean in negative painting is the key. If you mess up your color and it gets murky and it gets gray, then you might as well just give up and start again. So, just a little tip on that. Now, some other things I'm going to show you that I think you'll find interesting. Just ideas. These are just ideas. Letters. I think it makes a wonderful present for somebody when you have a letter that is, a capital letter like that, and people stop and they'll say, how is that done? I mean, because it looks so different. They don't get the idea that there was some negative painting that went on in there. And even when I make marks, like if I make a mark here, I'm going to negatively paint around it. I love the shapes. I just want to bring out the shapes. Here is another orb. This is a set of some orbs. And there's a lot of texture on these orbs. This is saran wrap and wax paper and anything else I can find that I think would make a mark that would be interesting. So that's a good way to start to work with orbs. Here is something very simple. Very, very simple. They're just leaves. And again, the process is that I would come in and, take my my colors, where's my blue, and, start to darken them. See, it's a process of using the same color at a darker value, or putting a color that is complementary into the mix. So, and even as you go, you can create shapes. Even as you paint, sometimes you're creating new shapes as they come, and taking them, let's say, to the border or to the edge of your painting. So it's a process of layer after layer after layer. This is another. I want to show you an actual. This is a page. I'm gonna hand this. I'm gonna let you look at it. It's a page out of archive.org. Let me pass it to you and let you go around. And you'll find a lot of old intricate textile designs and ornamental design and 1920, 1800s. It's wonderful. This is a little gouache. There was some white gouache in here, and that's acceptable. And you find designs in places like, I'm going to bring this over. Stuff. This is, I didn't need to bring this, but because I have the book, actually a book of Cusack's freehand ornament. But I'm going to pass this around and take a look at it. Lots of ideas, ornamental design. That, I mean, if you like to paint flowers, these designs are beautiful with flowers. If you like to paint architecture, it might not be quite the choice that you'd make. And then there's a book. Before it came out in public, I bought these designs, and they're similar. Let me see if I can put them right there. These are perfect for negative painting, for practice, really. I mean, when you look at them, I think about what they did in the 1800s with the stylistic designs that they had. Now, some of you may not be interested in this, but when I see something like this, I'm like this, oh wow, negative painting. It's perfect. And sometimes you'll find something that works in a border, just a little piece of something that will enhance your painting. Think about it, borders are wonderful. I mean, I love doing borders, but you can see some of these designs, and if nothing else, it's a great way to practice negative painting. Because if you look at this, how wonderful to put down color on this and then to paint around this and to create that kind of. Now here's, and let me pass this around too, so that maybe I should, it's kind of heavy, but it's now, then there are things like this. Look at that. That came off archive.org. And then you've got here, this is a good example of negative and positive. The same image, negative and positive. This is a letter. This is the letter J. And a lot of times, if these little areas develop in the paint as I'm painting, I'll negatively paint them. I'll include them in the design. I won't say, oh, that painting's done. You know, here's a little thing that showed up. Here's a little thing that showed up, and I negatively painted the image and included it in the overall design.
I'm saying stained glass windows.
Yeah, like stained glass windows. More orbs, and play, a lot of play here. Bird's nests. Bird's nests, this is very old. This has been in my hamper for a while. But the nest is great to be painted negatively. You know, just think of that, the twigs and so forth. So bird's nests are wonderful, and I do love bird's nests. This is a really old painting, though. It's not very good. And then this is an example of orbs with texture. You see all that texture? And a lot of times what I'll do is, sometimes, like in here, what do you think that might be? That's a straw. That's putting a little blob of paint and taking a straw and blowing it. Most of you know that, right? Yeah. But it just adds a little bit, a little bit of fun. And then in here, there's a stencil. See that? That's a stencil. And so it's just to make that space a little bit more interesting. Let's see. I've got a whole pile of stuff here. Now this, all right, I'm gonna put this over here. I'm a makeaholic, as you can tell, but I find it hard to watch television without doing something with my hands. Anybody like that? Who's like that? Yeah. So I keep these notebooks. I've got a pile of them now. And you know something? I like to just throw paint on the notebook, and then I sit and watch television, try to figure out if I can bring an image out of all the mess. Did anybody do that? It's really good, to train your brain to see certain kinds of images in your paint mix. So I brought it because it's one of those. Here's an example of just putting the paint down and then seeing a stencil. That's a stencil on top. And then I painted around the stencil, the white of the stencil, just to create those marks. And I didn't know what I would, we don't know where we're going to find a place for these things, but it's good to play with this stuff. And of course, cross. I love the cross. And a little play with an A. And this was play with, this will be here. This was kind of fun, that they're different, they're jars, and there's an awful lot of color in here. And I think that when I did this, I was trying to challenge myself to keep it clean. And because we've got a lot of opposite colors in here, well, not too many, but yeah, we've got the yellow in there makes it a little more difficult. And here is another example of, now these are archive.orgs, me playing around, and this is probably needs a little more work, and this one was fun. And this is great fun, and you can see there, especially where the negative, I haven't finished it yet, but the negative space that I'm painting in there. And that's fun. That's a fun stuff to do. And it's going to help you to build your negative painting skills. And then I'm sure you two will remember this because it's something that is, the borders, are kind of, we've got, the space here, the negative space here, and then we've got the positive, and it's kind of a nice example of trying to create variety in borders using negative space. And then you can play around with, squares. This is a great way of learning, is to do a lot of geometric squares and lay down your wash and work around, the design. Just play. It's just play. And this is a lot of color in here. Here's a tree. Now this is old. This is very old. But this is it was great fun to do the trunks. That's using negative space. It's this one little piece and then a little vignette in here. And so you don't need to do a negative painting that's totally negative. You want to include a little negative space in something that might not be fully a negative painting. And this, again, I think I showed you that. And I think I showed you that. Trees. Trees are always great for practice. I bet a lot of you have done something like this. Yeah. Because you've got your negative space. And then you've got your wash color. And so, to me, it's just play. It's just. Now this is something that is fun. It's fun to do circles. This is a mandala, and I used ink in here. But this is, of course, negatively painted. There's negative painting in here, pen and ink, and then there's some calligraphy. And by the way, while I'm mentioning the word calligraphy, this is a calligraphy pen, and it is my best tool. Does anybody use a calligraphy pen besides Rosie? I do all my veins. I do all my little tiny places with a calligraphy pen dipped in watercolor. I swear by this. I don't think I could live without my calligraphy pen. And Rosie and I were in calligraphy group for many years together, but that's the only reason I use it now. It doesn't get dipped into ink, it gets dipped into paint. And then again, here's a good example of orbs. And this was fun. I like this one, actually. And I put some paper, I'm trying to think what it's called, some collage paper into the background with it, just to cover up a little bit of and I used a straw to blow the marks and so forth. Just a lot of play. And then there's another one which I don't like, but it is what it is. And this is fun to do, this kind of design is to do Celtic like designs, and this one can be, this needs a lot more work. This is not done. Because whenever you have overlaps in a negative painting, you've got to shadow the overlaps. So I need to shadow, this needs to be, for instance, this here, that needs a shadow right under that, where that piece comes through, and that's not dark enough. See, it needs a shadow to really pop it out. And I like doing these Celtic designs too. So it's not done, and then it needs an outside border to sort of pop it out. So that's, and let's see, get down the bottom here. This is important to know the difference between the negative and the positive. Negative and positive. And this is what I would advise people to do when they're not familiar with negative painting, is to do a rendition, positive and negative. So this is negative, and this is positive. So when you do that, you train your mind to think, oh, this is a positive design that I'm doing, or this is a negative design that I'm doing. But then you'll find, once you start thinking about this, you go home, I guarantee you that everybody in this room will say, now that painting that I did a few years ago, that would have benefited from some negative painting. So, not sure if that's true or not, but I think it might. And here's the same one with color, and this is your negative and your positive. This is the negative with different colors. And if you train yourself to do this a few times, you'll start to get it. Then you can do flowers too. Here's a flower done negatively. And I would actually go back into this flower now because it's not dark enough for me, and do a little more work around the petals and so forth. And then, of course, when you do pull out an image, a part of your design, you've got to wash it out. Do you know about washing it out? Like you just take some water, wet brush, no paint, and just wash out the edge of your paint so that it flows into the background nicely without making really ugly marks. So that's, and let's see. And I wanted to show you, this is the book that is a very good book. Anybody has anybody read this? Oh, I'm sorry. It's like you gotta change your mind here. You gotta change your way. There, yeah. This is Linda Kemp's painting Outside the Lines, and it's one of the best books written about negative painting. Now she's not, she doesn't paint the way I do. The way we're going to use negative painting is very personal, and so you've got to think to yourself, how do I want to apply this? But I would recommend that you do a little bit and see if you like it. And if you do, then you'll find yourself a little addicted over time. Because it's really fun. It's really fun. So any questions? Anybody have any thoughts or questions, things?
Linda Kemp has a video about negative painting too. I've got that. She's very good.
Yes, she's.
I haven't seen that book, so I'm going to look.
Yeah, it's a really good book, and I think she's a second book out that I didn't think was quite as good, so I didn't buy it. But I think she's got another one, and she shows you just about some of her work. I mean, like this, she's got, she's painting around what appears to be white, and that's something I wouldn't do. Personally, I would always put an underpainting. The underpainting is important. And then you have to remember that the edges need to be pulled so that you don't end up with marks. So when you put that paint around a negative shape, quickly have a brush that's wet so that you can pull the edge. And the best really paints are transparent for this. your transparent paints done. Gouache, yeah, maybe, but only on maybe a last layer. I'm not a big gouache fan. You can tell from my face, I don't like gouache. But you want to remember that you have to go light to dark. You have to go light to dark. You want to extend your shapes. You want to use textures. You want to balance color too. So if you've got lots and lots of blue on one side, and then all of a sudden on the other side you've got yellow, it's not balanced. So you've got to think these. There's a lot to think about when you're planning it. So what I recommend is play. Play, like if you had that Cusack, that book that I passed around, the Cusack's designs, to use that as a way of experimenting with this whole process of creating the negative. Anybody have any questions? Any questions? Yeah.
So Jane, we were talking back here. So your underpainting, you always let that dry completely, and then work on it like wet on dry.
Yeah, always. I always let it dry completely. And if you don't like the underpainting, then it's probably, a lot of times I look and I'll say, really don't like this underpainting, and I'll just go, poop, because I know how much time it takes. When you're doing an intricate negative painting, it's hours and hours of just, carefully placing the colors, and I don't want to waste my time. So the underpainting is really important, and if you like that, you're on the right road. You're ready to go to the next step, where you begin to work and pull out those negative shapes. So has anybody done this already? How many of you have done negative painting? Okay, then a lot of you, I know you guys have. And is anybody totally, completely in love with it? Who's completely in love with it? Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah. Who hates it? Anybody hate it? No? No. Good. I'm glad there's no form of art that we should hate, really.
Have you done it with ink on top of the watercolor?
I really can't answer that question because I haven't tried that, but I don't think it would be a good thing. My gut is that ink, if you're going to use ink for your layers. Stick with ink. Opaques don't work well in a negative painting environment. So if somebody said, what about a full-bodied watercolor, I wouldn't do that. You really need transparent watercolors to get the effect that you want. And ink is kind of dense, don't you think? And that would block out the beauty of the layers, because one layer is, superimposed on another and they shine through. So that would defeat the purpose, I think.
What kind of paper do you like to use?
Oh, I like hot press. I do almost everything on hot press. Yeah.
And why?
I started with cold press, but I just got. Some people say hot press is tough, but something, I find it I just like the smoothness of it, and a lot of times I'm not looking for texture so much as I'm looking for a smooth wash or whatever. I'm just not a cold. I do use cold press sometimes, and I have both, but more than not, I pull hot press sheet. Any of you have a problem with, anybody dislike cold press? No? No? Good. So how many of you will actually go home and do a negative painting? Oh, good. Oh, good. 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 Yeah, and if you don't do an entire painting, just know that it helps, to use a little bit in your paintings makes people look at it differently. People will look and say, huh, what did they do in there that, something different? And they don't know quite what it is if they're not a painter. So you add a little sparkle, a little bit of something new and different to your paintings.
Are the books that you passed around, are those just for practice? Like, do you have to worry for copyright?
Yeah,
Right.
they're just for
They're
practice,
practice.
just for practice. And sometimes if you look at books like that, you get ideas. And it stimulates you to think, well, maybe that's a design, I wonder if we did it this way, And so I like looking at books like that to just give me ideas.